I think we all know that, our students learn at different rates, and so do our teachers. If we think about our teachers as learners, there's going to be early adopters, there's going to be those champions that it just comes naturally to them, or they're really interested and they're going off and they're doing that learning by themselves. But there are other teachers who maybe are a little bit more nervous.
Hi there, and welcome to the PonderingDan Podcast, where we talk all things teaching, education, pedagogy and technology. I'm your host, Danny Summerall, and if you're new to the show, make sure you leave a review and share with your peers. Connect with me on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at PonderingDan, as well as at PonderingDan.com. So today on the show, I have got Angela Norman from Adelaide joining me. She's an Apple Distinguished Educator who works in a large private school in Adelaide. She completed a Bachelor of Psychology with a minor in politics, and then decided to switch to primary teaching with an early years specialism at Oxford Brookes Uni in the UK. She spent 5 years teaching at a school just outside Oxford, where she was the Art and Design Tech Coordinator, and later took on the role of Head of Lower School. Heading to Australia, Angela spent a year working as a relief teacher in Alice Springs before moving to Adelaide, where she originally worked as a classroom teacher and now working as the Director of Digital Innovation, with responsibility from ELC to Year 12. So welcome, Angela.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Yeah, good. This is my
good.
first podcast. It's very exciting.
It is exciting, isn't it? I'm enjoying recording them, so I'm glad you're excited to be here as well. So I thought we'd probably start with a little bit about what your role is and what it actually means, because it sounds so fancy, Director of Digital Innovation.
Yeah, it's quite a mouthful. So I've gone from Head of E-Learning, which sounded a little bit 90s, so hence the title change over to Digital Innovation. So I've been doing this job for about 18 months now. So I stepped into the role towards the end of 2018, which was very cool. So taking over from Walter Barbieri, who is another ADE. He's gone off to work at the University of Adelaide and run the teaching program there, which is very cool. So really my role is kind of a little bit of everything. So mainly a big part of it is being able to oversee induction and professional learning for our new staff, but also do the induction for our students and our new families who join us as well. So it's quite a big role. I think January and February are the busiest time of my year because we have so many new faces joining us. So this year, for example, we had 14 new teachers join us over sort of a couple of weeks period at the beginning of the year. So it was a lot about running induction for them, getting them to know all of our different systems and what we do and why we do it. I also run the inductions for all of our students and parents as well. So every new parent who joins our school community will come and attend a session with me over the course of about 3 weeks, just to give them a bit of a heads up about why we do what we do, why we use the technology that we have, and how we're going to be implementing it in the future. I think for a lot of parents, it's quite a big investment when they join our school community. They're having to purchase devices as well. So they want to know that we're using them in the right way. And so a lot of my job is actually explaining, well, how are we going to be getting best use out of them, and what can they expect? I think that's probably particularly true for parents of younger students. So we've got a one-to-one iPad program coming from reception. So a lot of our reception parents, when they join, are a little bit curious or nervous about why we're doing this. Are the kids just going to be coming to school and playing on games all day? And so really I'm that first point of contact to say, no, that's actually really not what we're doing, and that's not why we do what we do.
Yeah.
A little bit of work with our students as well. So we found over the past few years, so Walter in his time in the role found that really crucial point for inductions for new students is really around that sort of upper primary and middle years stage. So every year, regardless of whether or not students are new to the school, we have an induction program that runs in years 5, 6, 7 and 8. And we tend to find that adolescent boys, that tends to be a really good time to sort of hit them with inductions around online safety, good digital citizenship, what are the expectations of the school, because they're making that transition from primary up into the senior years, where there is obviously a little bit more independence, a little bit more freedom, but with that we need the boys to understand, well, actually, what are their responsibilities as members of the school community. So that's kind of what I do for 2 months of the year.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the year, I work on lots of different projects, really. So we have our own bespoke LMS equivalent, essentially. So we actually build all of that in-house. We have a development team. And so I work alongside the development team and the head of IT to start to mock up new modules for that system, alongside the staff who are actually requesting those. So we've had a few different things sort of become developed over the past 18 months or so. So it's my job to kind of be a bit of a go-between between teachers who don't really know how a development environment works, and then for the development team to help them to understand what actually are the teachers asking for and why they're asking for it. So that's kind of one aspect. And then the other aspect, which is pretty important, is actually getting into classrooms alongside the teachers and supporting them with implementing new ideas in the classroom. How do I use these new technologies? How do I leverage the technology to improve student outcomes? So whether that's going in and supporting a teacher to run Apple Classroom for the first time, or whether it's going in and supporting a teacher who wants to get their class to author their very first multi-touch book on the bookstore. It's a whole range of things, and it really does depend on where the teachers are at with their professional learning.
Yeah. So really you would say that you're that link between pedagogy and technological knowledge and that go-to person to support that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't speak fluent geek yet, but I'm getting there. So
I'm sure you really do.
so I'm kind
You're
of
a closet
learning,
geek, I'm sure.
yeah, closet geek, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think, over the past 18 months, kind of learning to speak geek and to understand, well, actually, what does this mean in a development environment? What needs to go into actually signing something that is going to be used by our community, and what kinds of things do we need to take into account? So learning that for myself, and then now starting to step other people through that process of understanding that if they're asking for us to provide some kind of new technology, new user interface, then there are certain things that we need to actually understand about what they're actually asking for. So
absolutely.
Really interesting kind of side part of the job.
Yeah, and I really like, though, that a big part of your induction program is spent with those new students that don't or that aren't familiar with your programs, the one-to-one programs, but also with the parents, because a lot of the time parents get frustrated, and I'm speaking as experience as a parent. You get frustrated, they have to spend a lot of money on a device, but no one's actually told you, well, why are we buying it? What are they going to use it for? Are the teachers prepared to use them to the full potential? And I mean, I guess you're probably similar to me in that you probably think about, how are teachers going to use the technology? Is it just to substitute what they're doing in the classroom with paper? Is it to redefine learning, thinking of that whole SAMR model? So, for me as a parent, that's what I want to know. Are my students actually going to be challenged with their thinking by using devices? So it's really good that you're doing that. And it's something that I could probably note down to introduce at the start of the year with our programs here as well. So, thank you for sharing that.
I think our parent induction program has actually changed quite a bit over the past couple of years. So it used to be parents coming in and actually setting up the devices, so they would actually be hands-on, going through that that initial out-of-the-box stage. We've kind of moved on from that, really, and I think that's partly because we have the processes in place to be able to do that setup prior to the parents actually getting their hands on the devices. And so now we've just got this more time with the parents where we can delve into those sorts of things. So in all of my inductions, I just touch on, well, actually, what does our planning, teaching and assessment cycle look like with technology? And actually, how do we reflect on our programs? So what I try to do is give our parents some relevant examples of how has our program changed over the past few years, and what we've learned from our experiences, so that they can see that it's not just a rolling program that is static in its design, that it actually responds to the needs of the students and the needs of the parent community as well.
Yeah. And I suppose keeping up with the change of the rate of change of technology too. So you're always having to reflect and think about what you need to change. So my next question was sort of around, what you're doing to create that strong program of induction, and you've kind of already touched on that a little bit, but I guess from a staff point of view, what sort of things are you doing with new staff or even existing staff to support them through the different innovations that you're working with?
Yeah, so, like I say, I've only been doing the job for 18 months, which kind of sounds like a long time, but when you think about it in terms of actually how many goes around have you had, I've literally only done this whole sort of year experience once,
Yeah.
and sort of, I've literally just finished my second round of induction. So, I think for me, now that I've sort of got my feet under the table a little bit, it's about starting to build a bit of an overview of what our professional learning and induction looks like. Definitely from sort of a year sort of view, but then also going out, into, well, actually, what does 2 or 3 years at the school look like in terms of the kind of opportunities that we're providing? Because I sometimes think of it like I've got, say, 150 students essentially with all the teachers that I have,
Yeah.
but I never have a lesson time with them. Or, if I do, I see them for a couple of hours, maybe once a term if I'm really lucky, in terms of like getting everybody in the room together. So starting to try and build a bit of a picture about, well, where do we dip in and provide these opportunities for staff to learn new things and to upskill themselves. I think the induction, we're getting there. We're kind of starting to nail that down and what that needs to look like. So, for example, we went from about 2.5 hours to get through all of our induction. And we've got a full day with just on your teachers, and then we layered in some extra time throughout the whole staff days as well. So they ended up with a total of about 3 days worth of IT induction, which is like,
Wow,
it's
that's a
pretty
lot.
intense for new
Yeah.
staff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was nice to have them learning alongside the experienced teachers at the school who know how things work and have that sort of experience of working in the Apple ecosystem, I think.
Yeah.
So I think, having that sort of overview is really important, and that's something I'm working on at the moment, so that I can start to say, okay, how often am I introducing these skills? How often am I going back and sort of revisiting things? Because I think we all know that, our students learn at different rates, and so do our teachers.
Mm.
If we think about our teachers as learners, it's going to be early adopters. There's going to be those champions that it just comes naturally to them, or they're really interested and they're going off and they're doing that learning by themselves. But there are other teachers who maybe are a little bit more nervous, or they find it more challenging to work in this way. And so we can't just assume they're going to pick it up the first time that we introduce it and then we can just move on. We actually need to keep coming back to things. And I think over my time in the role, I'm starting to see some teachers just this past couple of weeks who are just now picking up and running with ideas that maybe I introduced 18 months ago. So I think that tells me that everybody can get there, but they're going to
Yeah.
get there at very different times.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly the same with teaching, isn't it? You have to differentiate that, and you have to find those students that do
Yeah.
need the extra support, and which I think is amazing that you're working with those staff like that. In those induction days, so you said there's basically 3 days worth of IT sort of induction. What are the sort of things that your staff actually work on, like apart from the technical aspects? Because I know that you like being creative with technology. I've seen some of the
Yeah.
stuff you've put up. Is that a lot of what you're showing your staff?
It's some. I try not to go too creativity heavy too early, because I know it can put people off sometimes. I think if they're not comfortable, they want to know how things work first before they start to try and produce things with it. So we actually have separated out that really sort of techie part completely. So this year we actually did. I think ended up being about 3 hours. We got all of our new teachers in of an afternoon just to come in. All we're going to do is get your iPad and your MacBook set up. And that's all we did in that
Yeah.
time. We got them set up. We made sure they had all their passwords for the different systems that they were using. And that just gave us a bit of breathing space to be able to, resolve those teething issues that you always get. Someone's MacBook for some whatever reason won't connect to the network, and the tech guys need to take it off and try and figure out what's happening. And by taking that out of the rest of the time that we were spending with them, it meant that we weren't having to kind of stress about, this person is trying to learn about this system, but their MacBook's off being sort of looked at.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to sort of take that out. So we did that in a half day, and then the following day they came in with their devices ready to go, and we walked through a whole bunch of different stuff really. So we went through all of the usual kind of routine things like, how do you log into this system? How do you find your timetable? How do you access your class lists? And how do you get your MacBook to print information, for those people who are new to that?
Yeah.
So we kind of did that, and then we went through the usual kind of like policies and how do we go through, what are the expectations for staff around technology use, and, please don't run a business from your staff MacBook and stuff like that. So all of those sorts of things, but we actually ran that as a bit of a Kahoot quiz with prizes, which was pretty fun.
Good. So
Yeah,
it's not so boring
cool.
after all,
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty hard to jazz up a policies session.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So they actually quite enjoyed that. So we did it as you don't have to read policies, but actually what you need to do is just use your common sense to answer questions about what are the main points of what we're trying to get across in terms of your responsibilities as a staff member around how you're managing your technology, but also what are your responsibilities in ensuring that the students are using technology safely.
Yeah.
And that was actually my favourite part of the induction because we'd just given them the day before, here's a brand new MacBook, here's a brand new iPad with pencil and keyboard. And the thing that drew the most excitement is when somebody won a box of highlighters because they won the Kahoot quiz about policies. So, everybody was cheering for that. And yeah.
Well, teachers love
I think
stationery, right?
We do love stationery, yeah.
Yeah, I'm also guilty of that, even though I love my technology. I think you probably would agree that having having that time with your staff at the very beginning is really important in setting up a relationship as well. As in teaching, we need to have a relationship with our students, and you're doing the same with your staff, so that down the track, you're able to, I guess, easily communicate with them about their needs with technology. Is that something that you find is important for you?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial, and I think that's probably the number one lesson that I've learned over the past 18 months is that those relationships are so key to you being able to be successful in your job. So part of that induction day that we did was after we got back from lunch. So we'd done a whole load of kind of that routine stuff in the morning that we needed to get through in terms of actually making sure people could get up and running when they got here. But we sat down after lunch as sort of a round group and just shared what is your experience with technology and what kind of environment have you worked in the past, and really what are your goals for coming and joining the Saints community in terms of your use of technology. What's your one thing that you really want to nail down in that first term? And it was really great to have that time for our new staff to share those experiences with each other. And to hear from each other. I think it helped them to build up the understanding that they're not alone in coming into something that is really brand new. We had some staff who were coming from a Windows environment into a Mac environment, and it was very alien to them. But I think them just hearing that they're not alone and, other people are on that journey too is quite comforting. But then it let me pick out, actually who are the staff here who are probably just going to pick up and run with it, who are going to be pretty easygoing. They're going to know, they're going to have the experience. And then who are the ones who I'm probably going to need to check in with to make sure that they're not drowning in the background, because we all know what it's like being new to a school. You kind of don't want to put your hand up and say, yeah, I'm not coping with this. You need people to sort of check in and understand that you're coming from a really different environment.
Yeah.
So that was a really important part.
Yeah, and that actually brings me to the next question as well, because you do have so many staff there, and I can relate with that because I'm from a big school as well. How do you actually make sure that you're able to check in with staff? Like, do you have a process where you might focus on, specific part of the school or specific teachers, maybe those ones that you are worried that might need a bit more support? How do you structure that as a director of innovations?
Well, I'm just sort of starting to unpick how I structure that now. I mean, I think, like I said, it's like having 150 kids in your class and no real sort of set lesson times to check in with them. So it is easy to lose touch with one particular part of the school. So, I've started this year using a numbers document just to log my hours that I'm spending in different parts of the school, whether that's on one-to-one meetings, whether I'm going to a team meeting for a faculty or a year level in the junior school, whether I'm presenting to staff, running a workshop. And it's really easy to have sort of a one-page summary of actually where am I spending my time and what am I spending my time doing. So I can
Yeah.
dip into that and I can just see at a glance, is there somewhere that I'm missing at the moment? And actually, what do I need to be doing to make sure that I don't miss out on a group of people? Um, for a junior school, it's a little bit easier. I am a junior school teacher, so I kind of know the staff really well. I know the teams. It's actually far simpler, I think, to check in with our year level teams and hit most teachers at least once a term. But senior school is a little bit more challenging. Far more teachers working in faculties who don't often get that sort of collaborative time. And when they do, it's really precious to them. And actually, they probably don't need me to be interrupting and saying, hey, here's this new cool thing you can do with the technology. So I
Yeah.
kind of have to do it more of an individual needs basis up there. I've got to say, a lot of it just goes on gut feeling of actually, I wonder how that person is going. And I think when you start to build up these relationships and have those casual conversations, you pick up on who are those people who I just need to check in with, whether that's just sending an email saying, hey, how's it going with this thing that you told me that you were doing, a few weeks ago? Do you need any help with that? Or whether it's kind of reaching out to them as part of a group and saying, hey, this opportunity is coming up. I wonder if you want to be involved.
Yeah.
So part of what I do with our new staff is I hit the end of the induction season, which is, takes about 4 weeks or so. And then once that finishes, that's my signal to send out a bulk email to those staff and say, hope your start to the year has gone really well, just offering you a one-to-one catch-up time so that we can talk about how everything's gone and what I can do to help you as we move on into the next part of the term. And some people take me up on it. Some people say, no, I'm all good at the moment. Thanks. I'll just let you know if I need anything. And that's fine. And whatever they want to do is fine. But I think just making sure that they know that support is there if they need it.
Yeah, and that's important. That's great. So what would be your advice for other school leaders around staff induction, professional learning, and the links to innovation?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when you said about relationships. I think relationships are the number one and most important part of what I do. And I need to understand the teachers that I'm working with, because if I don't know what makes them tick and if I don't know how they feel about technology, then I really can't do my job properly. And I think what comes naturally to one team member might be really challenging for another. So even within teams, there needs to be some kind of variation in what I'm doing. So if I go to a year level team meeting in the junior school, for example, even though there's only 3 teachers there, I might have a massive range in terms of their confidence with the technology and their skill levels. So I always just need to be mindful of the individuals that I'm working with, rather than looking at it just purely from this is an academic kind of point of view, or this is actually
Yeah,
what I want the students to be doing with the technology. And I think
yeah,
it's also really important to keep investing time and energy, even if you're not seeing the payoff that it feels like you should be.
yeah,
Because usually I find that if I'm sort of doing these things and I'm not getting through, it usually means that I actually haven't found that hook for that person yet. And
yeah,
actually what I need to be doing is something completely different. So, what excites one person and brings them into the use of the technology is not necessarily the same for the other person. While
yeah,
one person might be really excited by, hey, this is what you can do with numbers, the pretty arty teacher next door is actually going to be hooked in by something like Sketches School. And actually
yeah,
that's going to be their way in. And that's what they introduce to their class first, because that's what they're passionate about. And then
yeah,
everything else comes after that. So
yeah,
yeah, it's really important, I think, to be doing those things.
yeah. And it's I think this is one of the reasons I was actually excited to talk to you about this, because um, your role, my role, they're very similar. But there's not many of our roles out there. So
No.
what I've noticed from talking to people in similar roles is that we're often finding our feet ourselves, and we don't usually have a lot of support um, to work things out and to make things work really well. We have to be the innovators, and we have to find the good ways to do things, and we might fail a few times, and eventually get there. But what I'm really hoping from this conversation that we have now, and sharing that around, that people that are coming into the roles that are similar to ours, that they're going to have that little bit extra of support from you and from myself, to be able to be successful in those roles, because I think they really are important. And especially with the rate technology's changing,
Yeah.
And the rate our students are learning differently with technology. I think, these roles are important, and we do need to be in touch with those staff and support them through their journeys with technology. Yeah. Well, so that brings us to the end of this episode. We could probably talk for hours on this, actually, because I've probably got 1,000 more questions, but I'm also conscious of the time. But thank you so much for being part of the show today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
That's okay. So you're on Twitter, which is @teach_create_. So there's 2 underscores in there.
Yeah.
But also you have written quite a few ebooks which are available for free on the Apple Bookstore.
That's correct.
Yeah. What were the titles of those?
Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. I can't remember. No, so I think I did a series of 3 last year, which were based on a project that came out of the ADE Institute. So it was 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months. So it's kind of like a journal series about, what did I do off the back of that institute and sort of implementing what I learned.
Yeah,
which is
great.
And then I've got a couple of others, around one around science, one around math. So I'm looking forward to collaborating with some teachers on some more this year.
Yeah. So if you want to find those books, you just have to search Angela Norman in the Apple Bookstore and you'll find those there. And finally, if you have any questions for Angela or I about today's episode, or if you think you'd like to be part of the podcast, you can drop me a line at dan@PonderingDan.com. And once again, to help this podcast grow, please like it, subscribe to it, rate it, and share it with your peers. It's a great little PL that you can do in the car, which is part of why I like to do it. But do you have any parting words, Angela?
No, I don't think I do. I think I've talked quite a lot here. But I think just make it real, and I think drive home the why. I think it always needs to come back to the why. Why are we doing this? And,
Absolutely.
I think for a lot of teachers, they just need to know that you're doing it for a reason. It's not just because you're a complete geek.
And although really you are, right?
Yeah.
Joking. All right. Thanks again, Angela. And that's all for this episode. Until next time, everyone, I'm Danny. Bye.